So my partner and I decided to relocate from the partner's family home, and as the eldest sister needed her own space, she would move into the downstairs bedroom. This was going to work for everyone. My partner had been talking to one of his friends, and he lived 45 minutes back down south of where we were at this point in time. He had a 3-bedroom house with a spare bedroom not being used, and as he was struggling with money, having us live together and helping each other out was also going to work out for everyone. After moving into the house, our now housemate decided to take the spare bedroom and we would move into the main bedroom. We thought that was pretty swell. It took us a week or so to settle in, but once we did, we really enjoyed being there with our friend. We even got to know the neighbours rather quickly as well. Yes, he was the main tenant, so we abided by the few rules that he had in place. I mean, I wasn't working at the time, but my partner was still working at Coles, so he wasn't at home a lot of the time like I was. But we still both had to abide by the house rules. It had been 2 months and everything was going great. There were no arguments, no disrespect to one another. It was a nice environment. Although, those good vibes suddenly started to decay because my partner and I had just got back from his work and him and our housemate got into an argument about something not being done in the house. He said he would take care of it soon, but our housemate wanted it done then and there. This made my partner annoyed and stubborn. He wasn't going to do it then and there, but when he was good and ready. Now our housemate was getting frustrated. I piped up and said I would do it. After all, it was only taking the bins out to the street to be emptied the next day. After I came back inside, our housemate pulls me aside and asked me why I went ahead and did that. I told him it was to save arguments, as I don't like confrontation. He then got frustrated with me and said I ruined the whole point and fact of the matter, that it was my partner's turn to take the bins out. I then said I'd happily do it for him and no point really needed to be made. It was kind of petty actually. Our housemate looked at me as if to say I was wrong. I explained he had just finished work. I was happy to let him relax and wind down. Our housemate gave up on proving his point. He was disappointed in me, but I honestly got what he was saying, but I didn't let his letdown affect me. Well, unfortunately, the same thing happened with dishes, cooking meals, and the vacuuming of the house. My partner only wanted to help when it was his day off work, but our housemate didn't take him working as an excuse anymore to get out of the housework. My partner and our housemate started yelling at each other. I tried to intervene and exhaust the argument, but the fury was too strong to get in the middle of it. I stepped outside and seen our neighbour across the drive, asking what was going on. I told her everything and she stood there for a second, to then hear a big thud. Our housemate had fallen to the ground. We weren't sure if my partner hit him or pushed him, and we weren't sure whether our housemate provoked it or not, but it was getting serious. All of a sudden, my partner comes running out the front door. He was all red in the face, full of anger and fury. Then we hear the front door slam shut and the lock clicking over. Great, our housemate has locked us out of the house now. My partner goes back to the door, banging on it and yelling at our housemate to open the door. Of course, there was no response. Our neighbour told us to come over to her place to give us all time to calm down, but then our other neighbour comes out and asks what all the commotion was about. This other neighbour was a police officer, and we informed her of the situation. So she went to the door and knocked, but our housemate still didn't respond. She called out and said who it was, and that she wanted to come in and have a chat. Moments later, he came to the door. but told us we weren't allowed in, only the police officer. After they talked for a good 20 minutes, our neighbour told me and my partner that we were allowed to go back inside. My partner just went straight to our room, and I kind of hung around in the lounge room. Our housemate was out the back having a cigarette. He came back inside and I went to speak to him, but he told me not to bother and he was going to bed. He went straight to his room and firmly closed his door. There was so much hostility in the house now. I wasn't sure if our housemate was the worst housemate ever or my partner was the biggest jerk ever. The next day, everything was okay, but not the same as it was for the first few months of living together. There was still tension in the air, and I really didn't like it. I could feel it, and it was softly strangling me. I drove my partner to work, and I came back home. Our housemate was now whinging to me about my partner and how much of a jerk he is. I knew that, and I agreed. Then our housemate asked me, why do I put up with it? I replied saying, he puts up with me when I have my moments. I guess at the time I was blind, but our housemate was starting to not like my partner at all. But you know what? I was starting to not like our housemate either. But because I stuck to my guns and stood up for my partner, our housemate started picking on me. He started coming down hard on me now. He told me that on every weekday I had to start looking for jobs or finding something constructive to do with my day, as he started to get sick of me being at home most of the day, every day. I wasn't even allowed to be at home, even if my partner was at home from work. My partner would just come out with me on those days anyway. There were days I would be legit looking for work, but then there were other days I would go sit up on the lookout that overlooked the town. I also would go and see my friends from the share house. I'd tell them what our housemate's go was, and they would tell me he had no right to sit there and tell me what to do. I have rights, and I should live the way I want to. I would arrive back home, and our housemate would ask me what I did and where I went and so on. I just told him I was looking for jobs, and I went and seen our mates over the other side of town. Our housemate would then turn around and say, you didn't go out to see your friends, you went out to look for jobs. I really did have enough of this. I was doing what he wanted me to do, but it seemed like it wasn't good enough. It wasn't my fault that no employer was contacting me. Dude, why are you controlling my life? Why are you making me do these things against my will? You're not my father or my boss. Please get off my back. My partner then pipes up and says, yeah man, you need to lay off him. He's trying his best. I want you both working. It's only fair on the two of you. So now, after picking on my partner, he was picking on me. Him and my partner were fine now. I didn't understand what was going on. Were we taking turns at being the reason for his supposed drama? I got annoyed and I walked out the door and went and sat at the duck pond that was next to the complex. My partner came out and sat with me by the duck pond and told me that our housemate needed to stop this, otherwise we were going to have to move out. We didn't have anywhere to go, but there was only so much more we could both take, with our housemate's bullying and rules and regulations. He was taking it way too far. He was being a tyrant. We weren't playing happy families. We were a couple living with a friend. That's it. After sitting out by the duck pond for half an hour, we both went back inside, and our housemate said to us, look, I think you guys might be better off finding somewhere else to live. I don't think this is working out anymore. We both looked at each other, and then we both didn't say a word, and we retreated to the bedroom. The next day, our housemate gets a phone call from the real estate. Apparently, the house was going on the market. The house was up for sale. Our housemate started to freak out. and the one thing on his mind now was that he had to move out. He started looking for somewhere else to live, and surprisingly, he found a 2-bedroom unit just on the hill east of town. This meant that my partner and I could stay at the house right up until the house got sold. After our housemate had completely moved out and signed off the lease, the house we were in got sold to a couple of investors, and the good news was, we both got to stay there. We were so stoked. We ended up living there for a further 3 years, after 9 months of living with the housemate from hell. When he found out about the situation, he was really shocked. He realised he didn't have to move at all, but it was too late now. Besides, the rent where he was now was more affordable for him anyway. My partner and I lived on in freedom in our own house, and everyone was now happy.